Welcome back, Truth Seeker. Do you recall how on Sunday, week 1 of the NFL, the primetime baseball game was the Red Sox and the Astros? And before the game was played, I said I suspected the Red Sox would win because of the way the numbers lined up, and I expected the Patriots to win, and I thought I'd be a riddle with the World Series and the Super Bowl. Well, I still think all that's true, but something major has come to my attention now, and I am quite certain, very confident this morning, that the Astros are going to win this World Series again this year. And there was a huge clue from Sports Illustrated that this would be the case, written on November 2nd, 2017. On that day, Sports Illustrated predicted that the Astros would win the World Series again this year. November 2nd, 11/2. Remember, Houston equals 112. Super Bowl also has the gematria of 112. And the reason I'm feeling very confident that the Astros are going to win the World Series again this year is this morning I've been putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and here's what I came up with. Again, I talked about this a little more than a week ago. The man who wrote this article predicting that the Astros would win the World Series last year and then doubling down and saying they'll win it again this year, his name's Ben Reeder. And in gematria, his name sums to 147 and 57. Houston Astros in those same ciphers are 147 and 75. 57 and 75 are both World Series numbers. This year, it's the Astros' 57th season. Big World Series number. We always talk about it. And World Series has that gematria of 147 and 57 too. This year's the 114th World Series. If the Astros win the World Series, they will have won 11 games in the postseason and 103 in the regular season, which is 114 total games to win the 114th World Series. And I wanted to go back and look 57 days before the start of this year's World Series. The World Series begins October 23rd. 57 days earlier was August 27th. 57 days before the start of the World Series, the Astros beat the Athletics 11-4, a lot like 114. And what's important about them beating the Athletics is this right here. This is what's important about them beating the Athletics. There's only three teams in history that have won the World Series back-to-back. The Yankees, the Oakland Athletics, and the New York Giants. Remember, the Athletics, they go all the way back to Philadelphia. They weren't always in Oakland. But anyway, there's only three teams that have done it. The Astros beat one of those teams on that significant day by that very significant score. And as I've been talking about, this is going to be a year of history. There has been like a lot of records broken this year. History has that gematria of 114. Rare accomplishment to win the World Series back-to-back. I wanted to look at who the A's beat when they won their 3 World Series in a row. They beat the Reds, they beat the Mets, they beat the Dodgers. Now, we know that the Astros have already beat the Dodgers. They did that last year. And let me remind you, speaking of the Dodgers, this year we saw the Astros and the Dodgers eliminate the Indians and Braves on Christopher Columbus Day. So there's a riddle. Those teams eliminating the native teams on Christopher Columbus Day. That wasn't an accident. And don't forget the Astros did it with a score of 11-3, like how the Astros and Dodgers met in the 113th World Series. So, in light of the A's having beat the Reds, Mets, and Dodgers, this is what's interesting. On August 27th, the same day the Astros beat the A's 11-4, on that same day, the San Francisco Giants, used to be the New York Giants, one of the teams that won back-to-back, they beat Craig Counsell's former team, the Diamondbacks. Craig Counsell, when he was a player, he played for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And he's now the manager of the Brewers, who are one of the teams in the NLCS who have a chance to face the Astros if they are the team to be in the World Series. When I started thinking Brewers and Astros, I thought about how in recent decades they've both switched what leagues they play in. The Astros went from the National League to the American League. The Brewers went from the American League to the National League. And the year that the Brewers went from the American League to the National League was 98, which was 20 years ago. Astros has that gematria of 20. The Dodgers did not play on August 27th. The Brewers did not play either that day. But what game did stand out? I was just looking for other games August 27th. The Giants playing the Diamondbacks, that was the game that stood out because they also won 2-0, kind of like how 20 years ago the Brewers made their move. August 28th, the day after, was a span of 57 days from the World Series, and the Brewers got beat by the Reds that day. The Reds were one of the teams that the Athletics beat when they won 3 World Series in a row. The score of that game was 9-7. And the Dodgers won that day over the Texas Rangers, another team in Texas like the Astros. They won 8-4. Remember, this MLB season began on the 88th day of the year, the earliest start in MLB history. The Dodgers have not won the World Series since 88. We saw how the playoffs started 88 days after Manny Machado's birthday. I thought these were really encouraging signs for the Dodgers to win the World Series this year. And, they still have a chance. I mean, they still could. But in light of the way Sports Illustrated mocked last year and how confident they were and how they guaranteed their picks, this same guy, and then seeing this, the way all of this lines up and the fact that they beat the Athletics 11-4, 57 days before the World Series in their 57th season, and the Athletics being one of 3 teams to repeat in a World Series, this seems like the strongest riddle I've uncovered for anything yet this year in light of who's destined to win this World Series. I'm going to keep going back through the season and look for more significant dates. You know what? Let's just do this right now. Let's just look at the date September 8th again. September 8th was the big date connecting to baseball, the day leaving 114 days left in the year. Also, 45 days before the start of the World Series, where Major Leagues equals... Did I say 48 days? I meant 45 days before the start of the World Series, where Major League equals 45. Can you get 45, the 9th triangular number? Let's go to... wasn't that long ago. Hold on, I gotta make this screen more bright here. Why it's so dim? Just want to go back and look at our team still in contention. The Red Sox got beat that day. The Astros won that day over Baltimore. Brewers got a W that day over the Tigers. And the Dodgers won that day too over the Giants. So, the only team that lost that day out of the 4 teams contending was the Red Sox, which is interesting. Would have been more helpful if either the Dodgers or the Brewers lost. Let me look at the game totals. That was the 160th game for the Dodgers. .160th game for the Brewers too. The other thing I should point out about the Astros and their 11-4 win, the other thing that was big about that was it was their 131st game of the season. 131st? Remember, when you write out 57, just using the alphabetic order, when you write out 57, it sums to 131, like championship, also like Super Bowl. So this game, and keep in mind that August 27th was the anniversary of Houston flooding. Last year, we were able to call the World Series because of the flood in Houston and the fires in LA and how they both synced up with the World Series. Don't forget that this year, there was a fire set at the Cleveland National Forest just outside of Los Angeles, 78 days before the World Series. Cleveland equals 78. And the other thing about the Cleveland-LA piece, one more time, is LeBron James equals 114. He went from Cleveland to LA 114 days before the start of the World Series. So, if I got to pick one of the teams remaining right now to win the World Series, I think this is the strongest riddle right here. The Astros. And I wasn't looking at them this season because I didn't see how they had the numbers that corresponded with the 114th World Series. But it seems that it's more about history and channeling off of what happened last year with the 113th World Series and winning back-to-back, and the history and the rarity of winning back-to-back. The Houston Rockets won NBA Finals back-to-back, didn't they? Houston Rockets back-to-back NBA Finals. I want to see what years those were. What year did Houston Rockets win back-to-back championship? Did the Rockets win in 94 and 95? Yes, they did. Huh. I'm remembering how... Do you guys remember the story from... Let me pull this up. I'm remembering the rocket launch in Southern California that was synced up with the Astros and the Rockets and Tesla. Hold on. It was like 51. Where's that story at? Hold on, just trying to do this. Okay, so here it was. The Houston Astros World Series, James Harden back-to-back 51 points in the SpaceX launch of December 22nd, 2017. So what stood out about this is the Houston Astros, and again, Houston Astros in gematria sums to 51. Houston Astros, 51. They won the World Series 5-1. And then 51 days later, there was this story about the SpaceX jaw-dropping rocket launch. And that came on the same day that Harden scored 51 in back-to-back points. And he did it over the two LA teams. He did it over the Clippers and the Lakers. So think about it. Houston beats the LA Dodgers in the World Series. Final game 5-1. 51 days later, Harden goes back-to-back games, 51 points. And then you get this SpaceX rocket launch. Rockets, Astros. Is it communicating that the Astros are going to win back-to-back World Series over the Dodgers? So, I'm going to keep grinding on this and thinking about it. But based on putting these pieces of the puzzle together right now, I do like the Astros to win the World Series. And apologies to everyone who already put money down on another team. But I suppose better late than never. So keep working on this, Truth Seeker. Until next time.